Hi everyone, welcome to episode 1 of the Sound Mind podcast, where we dive into the fascinating world of music psychology. I'm your host, Sophia, and as a music psychologist, I'll be guiding you through everything you've ever wondered about music and its powerful effects on our minds, emotions, and lives. So whether you're a music lover or interested in the science of sound, you're in the right place. So I thought for this first episode, it would be fitting to dive into a core question of the field, which is, why do we love music? And not only that, but why does music make us feel so much? Whether you listen to music every day or just occasionally, I think I can confidently say that we all have had at least one experience with music that sticks with us. Whether that's been a song that's made us cry, or a song that we associate with someone important to us, or even a song that we hate. It's well known that music has a profound effect on our emotions, and as humans, we innately love it. It's almost like we're wired to love music. Now, to explore this idea a little bit further, I actually surveyed just over 50 people before this episode, asking them one simple question: why do you love music? And the answers I received were just incredible. I mean, some were deeply personal, others were quite poetic, but all of them pointed to just how universal music really is. One person shared, music is versatile. It can accompany another activity or be the whole activity itself. And I love that. I feel like a lot of us can have those moments where we sit down and we're fully present with the music. We're more intentionally listening. And then there's those times where we're using music as more of a soundtrack to get us through those particular tasks that we might need to get done. But related to that, another person said that music makes every situation more colourful and meaningful. And yeah, I think that's amazing. That's so true. But someone else described music as raw, emotional, subjective, and at the same time, scientific, functional, and refined. It's so true. And I think that's something that I want to dive into in this episode, is we can look at music in that pure scientific way, but it is such an emotional and subjective means of expression that it's impossible to just put it into that one box for analysis. But to sum it all up, another person simply said, music reminds us that we're all the same at the core. It unites us and makes us feel powerful. Now, seeing these responses, it's clear that music is so much more than just entertainment. It's something that's deeply woven into our lives. Now, I do want to dig into some of these themes more towards the end of this episode, but for now, I really want to explore another big question of today's episode. What is it about music that makes it such a universal experience? From ancient tribes to modern societies, music has always been a part of human culture. No matter where you go in the world, you will find music in some form, whether it's drumming in African villages, the classical compositions in Europe, or even just like pop hits on the radio. Music really transcends geographical and cultural boundaries. So why has music been so universally used throughout human history? Well, music taps into something innate within us. So babies, for example, they can actually recognize the emotional tone of a song long before they understand its lyrics. And that's just incredible, isn't it? This early connection to music suggests that it is a deeply ingrained part of our cognitive and emotional development. But if we go way back, music's presence in every society can be traced to our ancestors and their survival mechanisms. Our brains are biologically attuned to respond to sounds and patterns, which is why music resonates with us so strongly. And evolutionary psychology suggests that our ancestors' ability to detect and understand those patterns in sound really helped them process their environment more effectively. So whether that was recognizing the sound of a predator, identifying the rhythm of a storm, or just appreciating the musicality of that general social interaction that they had with those around them. In a sense, music was really part of the toolkit that helped humans navigate their world. Also, music helped early humans bond with one another. Our ancestors really relied heavily on social cooperation, and music was a powerful tool for fostering group cohesion. From early tribal dances to ceremonial rituals, music united people during those moments of celebration, grief, or even spiritual reflection. And this communal function of music really allowed individuals to experience a collective emotional response, really helping to strengthen those social ties and establish a shared cultural identity. But though music originally served social and survival purposes, its uses have definitely evolved over time. So as societies became more complex, music began to serve as a means of personal expression and emotional communication. In a lot of cultures, music became an outlet for creativity and a tool for individual reflection, whether that was in the form of song lyrics, instrumental compositions, or improvisation. Music really allowed individuals to express feelings and experiences that words alone could not. And I think one of the most fascinating aspects of music is its ability to resonate with people from all walks of life, no matter where they come from. While music styles differ dramatically across all of our cultures, music itself remains that constant force that connects humanity. And that's what I love so much. I mean, many of us really enjoy music from cultures where we don't even understand the language, but something about it still resonates with us. And I think it's that emotional core of music that really transcends the specifics of language and offers something truly universally recognizable. And I think the answer to the question of why music has this power to resonate across cultural boundaries, I think it's due to that physiological and, emotional impact of music. When we listen to music, we experience a range of emotions, whether that's joy, sadness, excitement, nostalgia, and these are often tied to memories, experiences, or just the music itself. But these emotions are universal, and music provides a medium through which we can all share and process them together. In essence, music speaks to the core of human existence. It enables us all to share in each other's joy and sorrow and communicate emotions that words often fail to express and create those bonds between different individuals and cultures. Music's universal appeal lies in its ability to tap into that collective, universal human experience. Whether we're celebrating a wedding, mourning a loss, or simply just enjoying a quiet moment, music is there to accompany us, reminding us of our shared humanity. But now let's dive into the research. Now, there are many theories about why music has such a profound effect on our emotions and simply why we love it so much. But one of the most comprehensive models is one known as BRECVEMA. This was outlined by a researcher called Yaslin in 2013. And this framework is an acronym that breaks down our emotional response to music into 7 different components, each representing a different psychological process that contributes to how music can make us feel the way that we feel, and therefore forming our love for it. It's so funny, actually. If you would have told me at university that I would be talking about this now on a podcast, I'd probably laugh at you. But honestly, this theory really does summarize the way our bodies react to music in all forms in such a structured and great way. So I think it's a great starting point. So let's break down what each of these components are. Starting off with the most basic level of emotional response to music, or really any sound for that matter, the brainstem reflex. The brainstem reflex is all about those instinctive, automatic reactions we have to sudden, unexpected changes in sound. It's almost like a built-in startle reflex rooted in survival instincts. So, like I mentioned earlier, back in the day when we heard those kind of sudden noises, that could mean danger, and our brains had to act fast. And that heightened awareness kept us alive, and it still operates in us today. So picture this, you're walking through a quiet forest, you're totally at peace, and suddenly you step on a branch, or a branch breaks in the near distance. Instantly, your body tenses up, your heart rate is beating, you're scanning your surroundings, you're on edge. And that's your brainstem reflex kicking in. And when it comes to music, the same mechanism applies. So for example, if you've got a loud crash of cymbals in a symphony, or maybe a jarring sound effect in a horror movie, that can trigger that same fight or flight response. It's that rush of adrenaline, that moment when your body reacts even before your mind catches up with you. And that's actually why music is so powerful in building tension, especially in those horror movies. So when the music swells ominously, it creates this growing sense of dread, and then suddenly it might stop. And in that silence, your senses, they go into overdrive. You're really waiting for something to happen. And when that scare finally comes, it hits even harder because that's your brainstem reflex amplifying your reaction. But it's not just about loud, sudden noises. Gradual shifts in sound can also tap into this reflex. So imagine the music in a scene getting quieter and quieter, almost disappearing. It might seem subtle, but your brain, it does notice it. And that change creates that sense of unease, again, putting you on edge and catching you off guard when that moment then comes back. But it's not just fear or suspense that the brainstem reflex can evoke. It can also contribute to feelings of excitement or feeling exhilarated. So think about that drop in a dance track. The music builds and builds, creating tension, and suddenly explodes into that high energy beat. That moment of release feels so powerful because your brainstem reflex is involved, reacting to the sudden change in sound and rhythm. And that's why we quite frankly lose our minds when we hear a good drop. What can I say? It's evolutionarily justified. But what's fascinating is that this response happens so quickly that it bypasses the higher parts of the brain. So before you've even had a chance to think about what you're hearing, your body is already reacting. It's proof of how deeply music connects to our primal instincts, showing that even at its most basic level, music has a profound impact on us. And from those instinctive startle reactions triggered by the brainstem reflex, we move to something a little bit more intentional, but still largely automatic. Something called rhythmic entrainment. And this is just a fancy way of saying that our bodies love to sync up with the beat of the music. And it's why you might find yourself tapping your foot, nodding your head, or even breaking into a little dance when you hear a good rhythm. It's automatic. Our brains are wired for it. So think about the last time you heard a song with a really infectious beat. Before you knew it, your body was moving. Maybe you started tapping your fingers on the steering wheel whilst you were driving, or you were at home and your foot couldn't stay still. And that's rhythmic entrainment doing its thing. Our brains pick up on the beat and our bodies just naturally fall in line. And this also explains why music is such a game changer when it comes to working out. Have you ever tried running to a playlist that perfectly matches your pace? It's literally like magic. You find yourself moving to the rhythm without even trying, and it helps you stay consistent. The beat keeps you going, almost like the music is your personal trainer pushing you forward. But it's not just about fast and high energy music. Rhythmic entrainment also works with slow and steady beats too. So think about those calming meditation tracks or lo-fi playlists that you might use when you're trying to get into that focus mode. When you listen to music with a lower tempo, something amazing happens. Your heart rate can actually slow down to match the rhythm. It's like the music is whispering to your body like, hey, it's time to relax. Let's calm down here. And I think that's just amazing. So whether it's getting you hyped up for a workout or helping you wind down after a long day, rhythm is such a core part of how we connect with music. It's almost like our bodies can't help but join in the fun. And I love that. Now, let's talk about another fascinating mechanism at play that explains a lot of our love for music. Let's talk about how music becomes tied to our emotions over time, and this is through a process called evaluative conditioning. And this is a form of emotional learning where certain pieces of music become linked to specific events, experiences, or emotions, almost like an emotional bookmark in your life. So think about how when you hear a song from perhaps a road trip with friends, it instantly transports you back to being on the road, the laughter, maybe even some of the snacks you had along the way. And then there are those throwback hits from your youth that kind of have this magical ability to make you feel like you're back at that school dance, a house party, or even back in your teenage bedroom. It's like instant emotional time travel. Christmas music is such a classic example of this, actually. Hearing those festive tunes almost automatically brings back feelings of joy, warmth, and togetherness. Doesn't matter if you're in the middle of summer or far away from home, those songs are so deeply tied to the spirit of the festive season that they instantly evoke those warm memories of family gatherings, gift givings, and cozy evenings in. Now, the same principle also works in reverse, especially with unsettling or scary associations. So, coming back to the music in horror films, those kind of eerie soundscapes and those really kind of dissonant melodies, they're specifically designed to make you feel uneasy, heightening the tension in those suspenseful scenes. So, take the Jaws theme, for example. It's just literally two notes, but they've become synonymous with lurking danger. Or how about those super screeching violins from Psycho? You can almost hear them now, right? You can hear it in your brain. And these soundtracks are so effective at evoking fear that even hearing them outside of the context of the movie can trigger that same feeling of unease. I actually relate to this on such a deep level. The Exorcist theme, for me, no, I can't do it. And Tiptoeing Through the Tulips, I think it's called, from the Insidious movie, they use it. Absolutely not. Like, oh, it makes my skin crawl. I don't know what it is about that song, but the association for me is so strong that I will literally run out of the room if I hear it. It's horrible. I feel like I need exposure therapy or something. Actually, just talking about that is making me uncomfortable. But this just shows how powerful and personal evaluative conditioning can be. Music not only has the ability to enhance emotions in the moment, but it also becomes a vessel for those emotions over time, carrying them into our future. It's why a love song can make you smile years later, why a nostalgic track can make you tear up, and yes, why certain horror movie soundtracks make people like me want to run for the hills. It's amazing how much emotional power is packed into just a few notes. Now, moving on from how music can trigger emotions through associations, let's explore something called emotional contagion, the next element of BRECVEMA. And this is where music actually infects us with emotions. So have you ever listened to a sad song and found yourself wanting to cry, even if you weren't feeling particularly emotional beforehand? That's emotional contagion at play. So what happens here is when we listen to music that expresses a certain emotion, whether that's sadness, joy, or even anger, our brains naturally try to mimic those emotions. So if the song is sad, even if you were in a perfectly fine mood before, your brain might make you feel that sadness almost as if you're catching it from the music. And that would be a better pandemic, wouldn't it? But what is really fascinating about this is that emotional contagion can sometimes override our own current emotional state. So imagine you walk into a room feeling pretty neutral, or maybe even a little bit stressed, and then a song starts playing. Maybe it's a upbeat track or your feel-good anthem, and before you know it, your mood shifts. You didn't decide to feel happy. The music just kind of did it for you. It's also not just about lifting your mood or making you feel down. This mechanism plays a huge role in how we connect with music emotionally. So think about those songs that make us feel hopeful, or the ones that remind us of being deeply in love and the feelings associated with it. There's something magical about how music conveys different emotions so strongly, almost pulling us into that emotional state. It's like the song's emotions become our emotions. And it doesn't just stop at the personal level. This is one of the reasons why music brings people together. When we hear music that expresses shared emotions, it creates a sense of unity. It's like we're all feeling the same thing together, even if we're miles apart. So next time you hear a song that makes you feel something, remember it's not just your imagination. Music has this almost subconscious ability to transfer its emotions to us. It's a direct link between sound and feeling, and it's one of the reasons music holds such a special place in our lives. Now, before we continue, I just want to take a moment to say, if you're enjoying this episode, it would mean so much if you could rate the podcast or leave a quick review wherever you're listening. It's a small action that makes a big difference in helping the Sound Mind reach more amazing listeners just like you. Thank you so much, and let's get back into it. So, we've spoken a lot about our emotions so far. But beyond emotions, music also engages our imagination in quite surprising ways. Now, this is something that's particularly fascinating to me, and I think it's something that people experience in different ways. And this is visual imagery. Now, have you ever listened to a piece of music and found yourself almost seeing something in your mind? Like a scene playing out in front of you, or an entire story unfolding? That's visual imagery. It's when music sparks our imagination and creates mental images. And sometimes these are so vivid that it feels like we're actually watching a movie in our heads. I think it's one of the most magical aspects of how music connects with us on a deeper, almost subconscious level. Take the iconic Harry Potter theme, for example. Even if you're not watching the films, just hearing that familiar melody can instantly transport you into Hogwarts. You might imagine yourself walking through the grand halls of the castle, perhaps flying through the sky on a broomstick, with all of those magical creatures and kind of enchanting surroundings. The music works like a paintbrush. It creates these vibrant scenes in your mind. No visuals needed. Visual imagery is a beautiful reminder of how deeply music can tap into our minds and emotions. It goes beyond just listening. It's like music gives us the tools to tap into our creativity, to dream, to imagine. And it becomes a kind of bridge to our own inner world, allowing us to see what we're hearing. I also find it's a great exercise in mindfulness too. So try this out. Next time you listen to one of your favorite songs, or anything really, just pause for a moment and think, what images or scenes does this music bring to mind? It's a really simple but effective way to connect more deeply with the music and actually feel more present. And now that we've explored how music can engage our emotions through visual imagery and Contagion, let's talk about how music also triggers some of our most vivid memories. And this is where episodic memory comes in. Episodic memory is all about how specific songs can transport us back to a particular moment in our lives. And these memories become like little time capsules. When a familiar song comes on, it can instantly take us back to a time, place, or emotion, even years later. And I honestly think this is one of the main reasons that we continue to love music so much. Think about this. Have you ever heard a song that instantly transported you back to a specific time in your life? Maybe it was a song from a summer holiday, or a tune that you and a friend would always listen to. And suddenly that song becomes more than just music. It becomes a key to unlocking those memories. Maybe you don't feel much when you hear a generic love song, but if that song was your song with someone special, it hits you in a completely different way. It's not just the melody or the lyrics. It's the memories, the emotions, and the experiences tied to that song that really make it powerful. And there's actually some fascinating research around this, particularly when it comes to something called the reminiscence bump. And this refers to that period in our lives, usually between the ages of 10 and 30, when we tend to form the most lasting and emotionally charged memories. Music from this period is especially powerful in evoking vivid recollections, as it's tied to the milestones, emotions, and experiences that we associate with this phase of our lives. Now, it's good to know I'm still in this period, so that's my excuse to go out and make more memories. Got to stack up that reminiscence bump. But this is also why those throwback playlists have such a special place in our hearts. They're kind of like emotional time capsules. You hear a song from your high school years or a particular summer, and suddenly you're back in that moment. You feel all the excitement, the love, or nostalgia that you felt back then. The music serves as this emotional marker which anchors us to the past and gives us a chance to relive those experiences, almost like they're happening again right now. And I think that's so magical. The music becomes a bridge which connects us to our past life in such a deeply personal way. It's like the soundtrack of our own stories, reflecting the highs and the lows, love and loss, and all the moments that have shaped us. Music is more than just sound. It becomes part of our identity, a way to feel more connected to the people that we were and the experience that have made us who we are today. It's one of the most personal and emotionally rich ways I think we experience music, and it gives us this sense of continuity and meaning in our lives. Now, let's move on to musical expectancy, the second last element of BRECVEMA. And this is the way our brains predict what will happen next in a piece of music. And while we might not always be consciously aware of it, we're actually constantly engaging with music in this way. Our brains are actively trying to figure out where the song is heading, and this shapes the way that we experience it emotionally. When the music meets our expectations, it can feel satisfying and comforting, like hearing a catchy chorus that we already know. But when the music defies our expectations, like with an unexpected chord change or a sudden tempo shift, it creates a sense of surprise or excitement. And this balance of expectation and surprise is what keeps us engaged with music. It's why we don't want every song to be too predictable. We want to have that balance between knowing what's coming and having the joy of being taken somewhere unexpected. DJs are absolute masters of this. Think about those moments when they build up the energy in a track, kind of what I mentioned earlier, when they bring up that drop. They're teasing you with that drop that's just around the corner. You know it's coming, but when it finally hits, it's like that wave of energy crashes over you. It's that perfect mix of anticipation and payoff. And actually, classical composers did this too, and some of the best, like Beethoven and Mozart, were experts at playing with musical expectancy. They teased their audiences, they would hold off on resolution of those chords, keeping them on the edge of their seats. And when the music finally delivers, it's even more rewarding. But our brains are hardwired to thrive on this mix of predictability and novelty. Take Bohemian Rhapsody, for example. That song is full of twists and turns. Just when you think you've got it figured out, it shifts genre, it changes tempo, or it completely switches the mood. It's a pure masterclass in defying expectation, a piece of genius. And that's part of why it's beloved by so many. You can feel that tension between knowing what's coming and being surprised. It really strikes that right balance. And at the end of the day, musical expectancy is what keeps us hooked. It fuels our emotional connection to music, keeps us engaged, excited, and always looking forward to what's coming next. It's a big reason why the listening experience feels so dynamic and emotionally rich. Now, let's wrap up the BRECVEMA framework with aesthetic judgment, the final component. And this is all about how we appreciate music, not just for how it makes us feel emotionally, but for its sheer beauty and artistry. It's the ability to admire the technical qualities of a piece of music, the harmony, the melody, the rhythm, the overall structure that contribute to its artistic value. And sometimes it's not even about stirring up deep emotions. We might just listen to a piece and think, wow, that's just really great, purely because of its technical brilliance. Take The Blue Danube by Strauss, for example. Now, you might recognize it from Squid Game. It's the music that plays when the contestants are walking up and down the staircase to enter the games. Now, for some people, this piece might not bring up strong emotions, but the beauty of it is hard to miss. It's elegant with those flowing melodies and a structure that seems to kind of effortlessly move from one section to the next. It's a perfect example of music that doesn't need to stir up intense emotions to be appreciated. It's simply just a beautiful piece of music to listen to, purely for its artistic value. And that's a big part of why we love music. Sometimes it's not about the immediate emotional reaction we get from a song or the memories associated with it, but it's also about recognizing the genius that went into creating it. The intricate arrangements, the delicate harmonies, the way everything fits together to create seamless, perfect whole. It's all part of what makes music so special. And that actually reminds me of that quote that I picked out from one of my survey respondents in the beginning of this episode. And they described music as raw, emotional, subjective, but at the same time, it's scientific, functional, and refined. And I think that just summarizes this section, that music is, of course, subjective, but it also can just be good because of the way that it's made, regardless of whether or not it moves us subjectively in the moment. And this ability to appreciate music on an aesthetic level is what helps us connect with pieces of art that might not necessarily reflect those subjective emotional states or memories. It's why we can listen to a symphony like the Blue Danube or a complex jazz piece and admire it for its craftsmanship, even if we don't feel a deep emotional connection to it at that moment. It's the art of music in its purest form. Sometimes music is just good because of the way that it's made, and that is great. So now we've explored the purely psychological aspects of why we love music. I want to go back to those responses I gathered. While BRECVEMA is an incredible framework for understanding why music affects us in the way that it does, it's clear that our relationship with music goes beyond what science has neatly categorized here. So I grouped the responses that I received from the survey into 7 different themes. And those were emotional connection and therapy, memories and nostalgia, connection and universal language, escape and imagination, mood and energy booster, storytelling and expression, and movement and dance. BRECVEMA explains how we experience music, but it doesn't fully account for how people use music to define their identity or express who they are as a form of storytelling. So many of the responses I collected weren't just about how music makes people feel, but more about how it shapes their sense of self. From the songs that define key moments in our lives to the artists that we relate to on a deep level, music often acts as a reflection of who we are. And I love this quote from one of the respondents who said that music reminds me who I am whenever I feel lost. And I think that just summarized how deeply engraved into our identity music can really be. And that's such a beautiful thing that this framework doesn't really account for. Another aspect that BRECVEMA doesn't quite capture is the social power of music. How it brings people together, strengthens relationships, and creates this sense of belonging. While Emotional Contagion explains a little bit of this, it doesn't fully capture the way that music can be this shared experience that connects people across cultures, generations, and personal histories. And this was really prominent in the responses I received. And I can really relate to that. For me, a huge part of listening to my favorite artists is being part of a fan base. So actually, The Weeknd is my top artist, and last week he dropped a new album, actually his last album. And my God, just being part of the fan base on Twitter brings me so much joy. The memes, the facts, the analyses, the theories, it adds so much to the listening experience. And it really is one of the top reasons I enjoy music so much. Everyone is so passionate about it. It just makes it such a fun thing. It's so dynamic. And this was really expressed in some of the responses I received. So one person put it that music is something that can touch hearts. In order to understand someone, you have to be able to speak their language. Music is the universal language. And that really kind of taps into how we all have our own individual tastes, and actually coming back to that sense of identity. A huge part of getting to know someone is their taste in music. And it kind of does allow us to express ourselves, and in order to communicate with each other, we oftentimes use music, and that really is amazing. And someone else said that it creates a bonding atmosphere within a group. Overall, it's my comfort space. So coming back to those ideas of being a fan base, coming together, meeting people that love similar music to you, it just really is something unique. And then there's the theme of emotional connection and therapy. And while BRECVEMA touches on emotional engagement with music, it doesn't quite explain why people often turn to music as a form of therapy to process difficult emotions or even help them to heal from trauma. Music can serve as a companion in our darkest times. It offers comfort and understanding, or even that sense of release, as mentioned, that words cannot express. It's a key tool for emotional regulation, helping us to work through emotions that might otherwise be hard to articulate. One quote in particular from one respondent really stood out to me. They said, "I love music because it's my best friend. It's my love language. Whenever I feel a lot, good or bad music is always the first thing I turn to. It speaks to me and for me when I can't express myself." That's such a beautiful way to put it, to call music your best friend. It really shows how important music is in all of those things that we already mentioned, but also as a comfort and being that thing to turn to. And similarly, someone said that music is like therapy for me. It enables me to feel emotions that's easy to put aside in the hustle and bustle of every day. So really having those moments where you're present with the music, you use music for that therapeutic purpose. And finally, the last theme that I felt wasn't encapsulated in BRECVEMA but came up in my data was the theme of escape and imagination. Music is often a gateway to other worlds. It helps us transcend the limitations of our own reality, helps us to explore new emotional landscapes, take us on fantasy journeys, or even create the feeling of being in a completely different time and place. Now, some may argue that this is addressed in the visual imagery element of BRECVEMA, but I think it's more than a visual element. People talked about using music to escape from their daily lives, to detach from stress, or even to imagine something greater than themselves. And this adds another layer to our relationship with music that's not just images in our mind, but actually larger than that. Someone said, "Music teleports me exactly to where I want to be. That can be up in the clouds, down on earth, or dancing on the beach in the middle of winter. No matter what's going on, music will find the way to elevate my emotions and live through them shamelessly." And that just perfectly sums up this theme. I think, being able to put headphones on and feel like you're in a different place, I think that's such a magical quality. Someone else said it's an escape from reality. When everything seems to be monotone, music can change how you feel within seconds of a song depending on your mood. And that does tap into that BRECVEMA theme of Contagion, but also coming back to that theme of escaping reality. And lastly, someone else said that it lets me dive into another universe and lets me feel emotions even more. And that just comes back to the ability of music to transport us. And I think that's something unique about all of the arts in a way, and why we should be fighting to ensure their authenticity. You know, whether it's writing or reading or listening to music or engaging in art, I think these are all things on this earth that allow us to feel as if we're somewhere else. And those are such key things for our existence. Now, if you want to dive into these themes and read some more of the responses, you can head over to our Instagram at the Sound Mind Talks. I'll be posting some summaries there, and there'll be some content for you to dive into. So don't forget to follow us over there. Now, let's sum things up. So as we've explored in today's episode, music is far more than just sound. It's a deeply emotional experience that taps into various aspects of our brain and our memories. As we've seen, there's this intricate web of factors that contribute to why music affects us so deeply. The BRECVEMA theory provides a framework for understanding how music taps into our brains and emotions at multiple levels, also explaining our deep love and appreciation for it, as it's so integrated into various aspects of our functioning, the emotional, psychological, and even physiological. But there's also elements that it doesn't cover, like the use of music as personal therapy, as an escape, its power to help us express and tell stories, and the way it connects us socially. And these are all topics and areas of music psychology that will be addressed in future episodes, so make sure you're following us to stay tuned for those. But until then, next time you hit play on your favourite song, take a moment to really reflect on it. Pay attention to the emotions it stirs up, the memories it brings back, or even the images and stories that it creates in your mind. You might be surprised by just how much is going on in your brain that you weren't aware of. Music is doing a lot more than simply filling the silence. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode gave you some insight into the science behind why we love music so much and the incredible ways it shapes our lives. If you did enjoy this episode, please rate and review on wherever you're listening. It really helps us out. And of course, share this episode with someone who loves music just as much as you do, or might just find it interesting. Until next time, keep listening, keep reflecting, and I'll see you here in the next episode of The Sound Mind.